Hi everyone, and welcome to the Friday, October 15th installment of the Silicon Insider, the only uncensored look at life and business in the Valley. My name is Mike Malone. I'm here with special contributor Scott Budman of NBC Bay Area. Our producer is Jordan Henderson. Our East Coast correspondent is Bob Grove. And our host, as always, is the Silicon Valley Business Journal. Well, besides mourning last night's loss for the Giants, what's new this week?
You know, this was a big week for venture capital. Not only is it one of the subjects of the Elizabeth Holmes trial, but it just had a huge week of IPOs, of startup stats. You know, we learned that Bay Area startups raised $30 billion in the last quarter.
Astounding. That was the national, maybe even the global level of VC funding just, a dozen years ago, 15 years ago?
Yeah, $30 billion in 3 months. That's a record quarter for the Bay Area. Space alone, obviously hot. It's been a big week for that. You know, they raised more than $10 billion in the corner just for the space
That's just
race.
crazy.
I mean, that's amazing.
Shatner helped.
I think he did, but you know, a lot of this money, I mean, the bulk of it was raised before Shatner. I think now the profile is even higher. You had a Blue Origin launch. You've had a few SpaceX launches recently. That's become almost the norm.
Right.
And, you know, between Richard Branson and others, it's a really exciting space that is generating, if not profit yet, a lot of excitement.
Well, I think the Shatner event expanded the scope of the space thing because now 90-year-olds are growing up.
Well, yeah.
You know, the only guy left is Buzz Aldrin. He's 91. In theory, he could do it again. That would be something.
That's true.
But watching Shatner come down, kind of awestruck. This is a guy's had more comebacks than, well, you can't even count the number of comebacks. But even he didn't do his wacky William Shatner stuff. He looked like a man, you know, who had touched the face of God for 10 minutes.
Well, that was interesting because obviously as an actor, he did all that.
Yeah.
But he was humbled as a human being, I think, to actually go where he went. And that was kind of moving.
Yes, it was. And it brings a perfect circle. I mean,
yeah,
especially for us baby boomers. I literally went home early from a high school football game to watch the premiere, the first episode of Star Trek. Okay, that dates me, but there you are. And now to see this 90-year-old man go up actually into space, impressive.
Very much so.
It makes you optimistic. I mean, all these years where the space program was essentially a bus program, you know, the shuttle, and we stopped chasing the stars. And you get the feeling it's going to happen again. It's begun.
Yeah, I mean, it's still really, really cost prohibitively expensive
Sure.
to go up there for someone like you and me. But the idea that it can be done and safely and as kind of a tourist attraction almost,
Yes,
I think is going to be attractive to a lot of people and a lot of companies, which means more competition and eventually the prices come down.
and you know, I think another factor is we have better telescopes now, so we know how many near misses of asteroids and space junk have come close to Earth. I mean, this has been going on for thousands of years and we never knew it, but now we know it. And it's kind of adds an added impetus for us to get out there.
Well, there's some rumors that Steve Wozniak's new startup is going to be somewhat space-based, but in sort of a cleanup mode kind of thing. No confirmation yet, but some people are talking about that.
Well, with all these speeches he's been giving the last few years, the money he's making, he can probably do it.
That's right.
Okay, Joe Montana.
Yeah, speaking of...
Okay, now I think of him as one of the great athletes, you know, a natural and all that, but I really don't think of him as a high-powered intellectual investor.
Well, I mean, he is...
$42 million.
That was a payday, yeah. So he invested with his VC firm, because he's now a venture capitalist, $100,000 in a company called GitLab, a San Francisco software company. They IPO'd just Thursday. They IPO'd big. And the $100,000 investment turned into a $42 million payout for Joe Montana alone. This is a man who, you know, call him definitely top 5, possibly top quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
Made about $26 million in salary for his entire career. He made $42 million.
In the morning.
Yeah, in when that company GitLab went public. And to his credit, I've interviewed Joe Montana about being a venture capitalist. He is willing to spend the time to do the work This was actually years ago that I first interviewed him about this, and to watch what others are doing, he clearly approaches this from not I'm the greatest of all time, but I'm a student, and boy, did that pay off.
Well, that whole Bill Walsh Niners crowd is, but it seems like the penumbra that came off of the old professor, because we worked together a little bit, and he was a very smart man, Bill Walsh, and very mentally organized. Look at Ronnie Lott.
I was going to say there are some business successes.
Look at all
certainly
these guys that played on that one particular Niner team, and they're all getting rich in Silicon Valley in tech.
Ronnie Lott, Jerry Rice, a couple of alignment. Yeah, it's true.
It's impressive. Nice to see. It's nice to see instead of buying a restaurant and going out of business.
Right.
They're
all getting into tech. I mean, we've seen this trend of athletes and entertainers doing it, and what a big payday for really one of San Francisco's all-time best-known athletes.
It's better. I grew up seeing Joe Louis being a greeter at a casino in Atlantic City. These guys end up broke.
Yeah.
And to see these guys actually coming into their own in their 60s and 70s and ending their career in glory as well.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying. Okay, LinkedIn in China. They're shutting down operations there?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn was, I think, the last of the dot-coms to operate there just because of the government. And even then, LinkedIn had to give in to a lot of government censorship. And Microsoft finally pulled the plug. I think this was fairly inevitable. It was too bad because it was nice to see at least one somewhat open social company, but they even weren't all that open in China.
No, and China will, arbitrarily shut down companies operating there just to show that they have the upper hand. Frankly, standing up to China, bully for LinkedIn. One of our most loyal listeners, literally from like the first week, Nina McQueen, she's an executive at LinkedIn. And, I got to say, well done. If you're out there listening, I'm sure you are. You will be tomorrow morning on your walk. Well done. You got to stand up to totalitarians, and we're not doing it enough. And China's become the bully of the world. And we should, that's it. We should have enough of it. Okay, Coinbase. Companies at some point have to get into things like service and support and customer service programs and phone lines and all that. Well, apparently in the cryptocurrency world, they're still learning how to do that because Coinbase apparently just blew it with their new customer service call-in system. They've had thousands of complaints. The company's not handling it well. LA couple lost $700,000 in their Coinbase account. They said it was hacked. The company's response was, "We're not responsible for hacks." It took a while for the rest of Silicon Valley, like Intel. Remember when the Pentium chip had the bug, and Andy Grove publicly said, "Well, it only happens once every 10 million times. So what's the problem? Get over it." And the world just went insane because Intel had not figured out that it actually now had its Intel Inside campaign had now created consumers, not just corporate customers, and they had to scramble and they learned their lesson. Well, I think crypto's about to undergo its lesson on customer service.
I mean, I would argue that tech hasn't ever learned its lesson on customer service. The crypto thing, Coinbase, it's just the latest web-based company or even app-based company to have terrible customer service. Right. And I know I sound like a grumpy old man when I say this, but I speak for everybody of my generation, of the previous generation. It's super frustrating when an entire company doesn't even have a phone number, doesn't even have anyone to talk to.
Well, that's the thing. They always start out and you have the phone number, you have the email of the CEO, and then you know when they're getting successful because
right.
all of a sudden you can't contact the CEO.
But I'm not even talking
about...
about...
you can't contact the company.
Right, but I'm not even talking about as a reporter. We do have more access to these companies, but the customer service...
Yeah.
I mean, I've had so many people say, I just needed someone from Facebook to tell me what to do about this, that, or the other.
Right.
No way.
They've actually implemented systems to keep you from ever talking to a human being at that company.
Right, and even the chat features, whatever it is, they've been woefully inadequate. And it's an entire industry-wide thing. There's this almost arrogance that, hey, the algorithm will take care of it, or some bot, or some CRM feature. But really, CRM is great up to a point, but at some point, you want to have something of a human relationship with the company.
Where you can interact and adjust your question and all that, which you can't do. And and companies can get away with it as long as everybody starts getting frustrated about customer service, and the company goes, well, look, a shiny new object, a squirrel. And everybody goes, ooh.
Right, and the idea that we expected a cryptocurrency company to solve this is laughable.
Yeah.
But what I thought about when I saw the Coinbase thing was this is just the latest in a long line of shameful lack of customer service when it comes to tech companies, especially those based online.
Yeah, and it'll continue as long as they don't pay any consequences for it.
Yes.
Okay, what everybody tuned in again this week for, give me an update on the Holmes case, the Elizabeth Holmes case,
the Holmes
case.
Yeah, so this was a week without any big time, James Mattis type witnesses, but the trial took an interesting turn because it was all about Safeway and Walgreens and how they not only tested the machines, wanted the machines, paid for the machines. They were both investors in Theranos, so they had skin in the game, tens of millions of dollars. Safeway transformed more than 900 stores by adding entire nicely furnished rooms to be mini labs for Theranos tests.
Do you realize how close we came to having thousands of Theranos testing stations in supermarkets and drugstores around the country?
We came very close.
And if they had all failed,
yeah.
If they had all given false results, what kind of catastrophe that would have been?
My local Safeway, just in San Jose, not a especially nice store, but it has that really nice room.
Yeah.
And I was convinced even from the beginning that it was a Theranos room. And, family members, fellow shoppers, they all thought I was nuts.
Yeah.
And now, you go in there, maybe you get a flu shot. And, they used to just take you right in the aisle, roll up your sleeve.
Oh, yeah, right next to the blood pressure machine.
Exactly. But now...
Behind the erectile dysfunction shelf.
Whatever. Now there's an entire room for it, and yet it's being used only for, of all things, flu shots, but also Quest diagnostic tests now, which is the ultimate slap to Theranos. But so all these rooms, Walgreens testified over the last couple of days. They invested.
But they put dough up. These are public companies. I mean, you could see shareholders getting really upset.
They very much did. The former CEO of Safeway, was pressured out of a job largely because the stock price was going down. They were spending all this money without seeing any results. And he spoke of the frustration, as did Walgreens executives, who also put a lot of money into this and could not get anything close to a test result that made sense.
Was this a perfect con, or did these companies just not do the right due diligence?
Well, you could look at
You
it
would think
both
if you're
ways.
going to put in tens of millions of dollars and do new construction on all of your stores, you might want to actually see the machine in action and know that it works.
I mean, I spoke to one lawyer who said, it kind of could have worked for both sides. On the one hand, you had these giant chains pointing Elizabeth Holmes and saying she was in charge. We invested all this money and got nothing in return. But like you just said, the lawyer said at some point, if Walgreens is actually testing people, which they were with these machines, it's also up to them to do their due diligence, and they clearly did not. And so they share some of the responsibility, and therefore, do you only target Elizabeth Holmes? I mean, this is obviously her trial, but some of the responsibility, I think, this week shifted to some of these other companies.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's nice. I see all these gold nuggets on the ground, but can I actually go in the mine? Well, no, you can't. We're still working on it. Well, that should have been a clue right there. Every con in the world starts this way. If it was a con. I'm not publicly saying I think it was a con, but I have my own feelings about all this.
I mean, it could have been, biotech takes a long time, but even knowing that, if there was still a belief that the devices would work, they were clearly released to the public too early because we had all these wrong tests.
And the irony is there probably will be such a test in the years to come. Somebody else is going to figure out how to do it right. We've seen this happen over and over again. First entries into markets oftentimes fail miserably.
I don't know. I thought of this as I had to take a little bit of time off the trial just to head down to Quest because I had a doctor's appointment to do my regular yearly blood draw.
Right.
And I thought, for the first time, I'm really going to pay attention to this and think about the difference if it was just a finger stick. And by the time I had my thought, Quest had drawn all my blood and said, hey, thanks, you can go back to work now. I rolled up my sleeve and I thought, all right, that didn't take all that long.
No, but they do take a whole lot more than a little finger stick.
Yes, true.
I do it every day, I'm an old man now, diabetes, but I can literally get different readings from different fingers.
Okay.
So, this is not, cutting edge technology that you can risk your life on.
True, and that's part of why we're here in this trial.
That's why we're in this trial.
Yeah.
Okay, the Great Resignation. Labor Department's new survey suggests that roughly 4 million Americans are quitting their job each month, and they're dubbed it now the Great Resignation. And a Harris poll of 903 workers found that half of them want to make a career change. This is big stuff. I mean, this is literally a cultural shift. And they're doing it, 41% of those surveyed said they are considering leaving their jobs because their company has not cared for their concerns during the pandemic. And a whopping 76% say they want their company to make work permanently flexible. We talked about this in the middle of the lockdown, that this was going to change the nature of American life and of work. That we've seen the promised land now, and we're not going back to Egypt,
Well, part of it is what you just said. Employees feeling the companies didn't treat them right, and not wanting to go back to the long commute and all that. And I think that's of the same piece.
Yes.
Companies still expected you to put in long hours. In fact, I've had many people tell me as they worked at home, the companies pretty much figured, oh, I can call Michael anytime.
Right.
And so you really had no time to yourself as opposed to in the office when maybe you could have a little flexibility. And so you feel that you worked just as hard, if not harder. And now, but there was a benefit. No commute.
No commute.
Right? You didn't have to
Stay
pay
at
the high
home,
price
play
of
with
gas.
the kids.
Well, right. You didn't have to spend an hour each way in traffic. That's a quality of life issue. So there were some benefits. And now the same job is saying same hours, same pay, 2 hours on the road.
Come on in.
You're like, wait a minute.
Traffic again.
Right.
Yeah.
So you saw the promised land, and I don't know that I'd call work from home the promised land, but
I think for some people it initially was.
Right, and it was an improvement in lifestyle, and that, like you say, you could see your kids more, see your family more. Just the wear and tear of a commute wasn't on you.
Yeah.
And you feel that in your bones. You feel that in your back when you're tense when you're driving to and from work.
Walking down the hallway to your office is so
Yes.
much nicer than going out and get a cup of coffee. Yeah, you have to take those stupid phone calls and you have to sit on those dumb Zoom meetings, but it's worth it rather than sitting on 280 or 101, bumper to bumper.
Right. And now I think the shift will come because a lot of these workplaces, and full disclosure, I cover tech, so I don't know much about the other workplaces. But here in Silicon Valley, the tech companies were saying, all right, this is great, we'll bring you back. Thanks to you, we met our numbers, our stock prices stayed high, everything was great. Now get back in those cars.
Keep up the good work, and now you get to do it back in the office.
Right, and people
we want
said,
to keep an eye on you.
Yeah, wait a minute, I'm not feeling so good about coming back, whether it was because of vaccination rates or masks or whatever it was. And now these companies continue to push the dates back into 2022. Amazon famously told a whole bunch of workers this could be indefinite. I think we're going to see more of that. Now, Salesforce and Apple didn't build those incredible structures. NVIDIA in Santa Clara didn't build those things so that people could work from their couches.
Exactly.
But that said, it's going to be tough to get people back to work. And the companies are going to have a challenge because they can't claim, oh, we need people in the office.
No.
Because we don't. They don't.
So the Apple mothership turned into an indoor racetrack. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. A giant terrarium.
Hockey.
It's
a beautiful stadium.
Now, this is interesting. A woman, Kathy Wood, she runs the CEO of an investment firm called ARK.
Right. Very well known among cryptocurrency, among traders, all that, yes.
She's moving the company to St. Petersburg. And she predicts that type of move is the future. And that is going to bring down housing values, everything else in these tech enclaves, and nobody wants to be in Silicon Valley anymore. They want to be in St. Petersburg. I don't think they've done enough research on life in Florida, uh, especially when you literally have memes out there called Florida Man for all the weird stuff that happens down there. But it's an interesting notion that we could strip out this town and a lot of its value because companies just want to go someplace that's not this town.
Right. Some companies want to go someplace that's not this town, and that makes sense. I mean, the costs are high, the tax levels are high. We see Tesla move its headquarters, uh, you know, Oracle, HPE, the list goes on. But for all of the complaining about living in the Bay Area, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, the numbers, it's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
very crowded, and I know people like to complain.
I like it. I would believe in theory, except my father-in-law moved down to Ocala, Florida, which is the highlands of Florida, right? It's like 100 feet over sea level. And he would dig in his backyard and hit water
Right.
about a foot down. He had water moccasins in his yard.
Ooh.
People had to, if you left your house and left the garage door open with the light on, you come back, the ceiling would be black with bugs. I'm sorry, but that's a swamp.
Right. And we're not even talking about climate change yet.
No.
But if we did, um, some of these Florida destinations wouldn't look as good. I mean, Texas, God bless Texas, all right? Its politics are extremely right wing. It's got power problems. All these techies are saying, yeah, we're going to move there. But wait a minute. Those same techies are tweeting about how important, liberal progressive policies are, not to mention keeping the lights on. So why are you going to a place where that's all of a sudden a challenge? Everywhere has its challenges,
Everywhere.
including the Silicon Valley. But
And what you're
ultimately,
not going to get down there is walking into your local coffee place and everybody around you is talking tech and talking startups.
maybe in Austin.
Maybe in Austin, but
And in Miami, they're talking Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Yeah.
But okay,
In
so
Austin, they're all scoring weed. I mean,
well,
so
okay, in San Francisco, like they're not.
that
Come
too,
on.
yeah.
But okay, so, but I'll say that is broadening out the tech economy, and good for the tech economy. It shouldn't all be in one place because, as we've seen, that makes housing ridiculously
Yeah.
expensive. But still, there's no exodus. Exodus,
I
as
get all
it's
the local
defined,
real
is
estate flyers. The numbers are incredible still.
yeah.
I mean, they're going up faster than they were a few years ago when we thought things were out of hand. I mean,
Right.
I can't believe the pricing of homes around here now.
Well, look, the combination you need to see for that to go down is A, more houses going on the market, which I think
Right.
we'll see as people feel better about that, and B,
Even in Sunnyvale, I've noticed the Longhorn restaurant, which has been there for 61 years across from my old high school. That whole shopping center is now going to be mixed use with residential. They're doing,
right.
all the cities are infilling like crazy. There's just a lag time.
Well, we need more housing here, and if people do move out, and again, we haven't seen that in large numbers, housing prices will drop. Look, they did in the heart of the pandemic. People were moving out of their apartments. Rents fell in San Francisco by quite a bit, which was, whoa, that was an eyebrow raiser.
Yes, it
They're
was.
back up now because people are moving back for their
Moving
jobs.
back, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob Gross sent me this one. A woman, I'm going to get her name wrong, Ifeoma Ozuma. Have you heard about her?
Yes.
Former employee of
Pinterest.
Pinterest and Google. She just published a resource guide for tech workers who are considering going public with complaints about their employees. So it's basically a whistleblower book.
Yes.
And she's known, I guess, you must have covered it. She helped write the bill, the law in California that limits non-disclosure agreements.
Well, right. Well, this all came from her treatment and writing about it and complaining about it successfully while she was at Pinterest. And with all of the whistleblowing you're now starting to see, and Facebook aside, so far the whistleblower guide seems to have been go on Twitter and complain,
Yes.
and get enough of sort of a swell that way. Which again is largely how the Me Too movement started. You had a hashtag, you had a lot of people willing to say, "Hey, that happened to me
Isn't
as
it
well."
so Silicon Valley though? You got somebody that says, "Oh, well, here's a new market.
Well,
I'm going to provide the tools."
I don't know that it's a market. I think it's a guide because there are a lot of people out there. Look, admittedly, and this is an embarrassment for Silicon Valley
Well,
tech
we just
companies.
talked about all those people that want to leave their jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
And if this makes it I don't know. If your HR department is doing what, say, the Uber HR department did when there were some legitimate complaints, that's a brick wall. This says, here's how to scale that wall and make your complaint known. And that's how change is going to get made around here.
I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. More sunlight, the better, as
Yes.
always. Okay, so I was going to make my kicker Bill Shatner going into space. Let's close on that. I mean, it's such an interesting thing that we have Bezos going up, we have William Shatner going up. It's a different time now. I mean, space tourism is now real, and no one seemed to be too concerned that Shatner was going to go out in a blaze of glory. In fact, I read some columns that said, wouldn't it be perfect if he went out in a blaze of glory in space? But we're already now accepting the fact that this thing works and it's becoming safer.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's dangerous as hell. I mean, I remember talking to James Burke, the famous science writer, and he covered the space shuttle for the BBC along with the Apollo, and he said we made the mistake of relaxing, that we started to take for granted that the space shuttle was just a big white bus, and we stopped listening to the broadcasts, the launches, and everything else, and then all of a sudden Challenger. And he said it was such a shock to the system, it almost shut down the whole space program forever because we got complacent. And is there a danger now? Some celebrity goes up and doesn't come back. Are we at risk of that right now? That we're moving too fast to take this thing to the general public?
Well, look, I mean, sure, we lose celebrities. Goodness, we lost Kobe Bryant in a helicopter.
Right.
We've had, shuttle disasters in the past. So yeah, that risk is always there. And yes, that's a risk if we get into space tourism. But like you said, you wanted to end this on a positive note. There was something a little while back about when Jeff Bezos went for the first time in Blue Origin and came back and said, "Hey, thanks to everybody who, busts their butt at Amazon and all the shoppers."
All those workers peeing in the bottles at Amazon.
Cringe-worthy response that only Jeff Bezos and a trillionaire could have come up with. And then you had William Shatner, who, for all sorts of reasons, was an appropriate choice to go into space.
Right.
And his humble, I never thought it would be like this sort of response. And that's William Shatner, of all people, to be humbled.
When the Shat says that, that's impressive.
Of all people to be humbled, I was touched by that, and that made it more real. And so, of course, there's a risk. But boy, to see his face and hear his words as all of a sudden he became just a guy who got to do something special.
Yeah, and it's got us looking at the sky again.
Yeah, and that's, for a fan of space as I am, and I know you are, I think that's important.
I agree completely. I can't say anything else. That's it for now, folks. You can find us on the Silicon Valley Business Journal homepage, as well as on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.